started, so I'm gonna hang up on the phone. Same. Okay. Keep forgetting to find another timer app that I can show on the screen. All right. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is my name is Liana West. I am the chairperson for the Green Party of Maricopa County here in Mesa, Arizona, and the Maricopa Greens are hosting two candidate forums before the primary this year, 2026. And tonight we're going to hear from John Ralston, who is running for Secretary of State. And we're going to hear from Carlos Melendez, who is running for governor of Arizona. And we're going to hear from Gary Swing, who is running for, remind me which seat you're running for, Gary?
It's the 6th congressional district.
Awesome. Thank you. The candidates have had a chance to read over a list of questions that we came up with that we thought voters would want to hear. However, the audience members will take precedent over any questions that we have prepared the candidates with. Um, this me this candidate forum is being recorded so that the candidates can use anything that they say publicly in their in any type of advertisement for their campaign. So if you're uncomfortable with being recorded, just remember to keep your camera off and your microphone muted. To answer your question earlier, John, Brendan already contacted me and confirmed that he is available for next Monday, the 13th, our second forum. So we'll have a full slate on Monday as well. All right. Let me I would like to, who would like to go first between Gary, John, and Carlos?
I, I can go first if you'd like.
Would you like to go first, John? I appreciate that. So, what we're going to do is give you, let's see, do you need full 5 minutes or for your introduction, or you can have an introduction and then we'll do 2 minute questions just to make sure that, um, and then up to 15 minutes each. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Yeah. My stump introduction is usually like 2 or 3 minutes, so
Uh,
should be fine.
all right. All right. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Sounds good. My name is John Ralston. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm 52 years old. I live in Tucson, Arizona, and I am running for Secretary of State with the Arizona Green Party. I'm doing this because the largest group of voters in most elections are those who do not vote. Polling shows that Americans want a quote unquote third party. And here in Arizona, independent registrations continue to grow. They're approximately a third of all registered voters here in Arizona. But the question needs to be asked, from whom are you independent if your only choices are Democrats and Republicans? The system that the Republicans and Democrats have established is hostile and presents barriers to entry for those outside the Democrat and Republican parties. I'm running for Secretary of State to advocate for reforms that facilitate multiple candidates, elections, and multi-party democracy. My campaign will advocate for what we refer to as sincere voting methods like ranked choice voting, approval voting, or star voting for single winner elections, allowing multiple candidates to compete without the fear of vote splitting. I advocate proportional representation in multi-member districts for legislative bodies and multi-winner offices to produce more ethnic, religious, ideological, sociological, and socioeconomic diversity in our representatives, as well as addressing the current issue in the moment regarding gerrymandering. I propose the elimination of primary elections, publicly facilitated primary elections with political parties selecting their candidates via party nominating conventions, and fair ballot access for, again, quote unquote, independent candidates to get on the ballot, the general election ballot. Political parties are private organizations, and the public should not be subsidizing party functions. Political parties can determine their own candidate criteria and candidate selection process that they administer to select their candidates for the general election. Those outside of the political parties should have fair ballot access criteria with reforms to the challenge process to enable candidates outside of the political parties to fairly compete in the political marketplace. I advocate for ballot verification systems like Severa or ABE to verify elections and fight cynicism surrounding election results. I support same-day voter registration to further increase the franchise for voters, and I will advocate for safety and civility for election administrators and election workers so that they can professionally do the job that they're asked to do. My campaign will use the bully pulpit of the Secretary of State's office to lobby and advocate for these reforms to improve the political marketplace, which will hopefully transform our politics and our governance. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I wish I had a little audience. I wish I had a little like audience clapping thing. Maybe I have to look, see if I have some buttons I can add for before next week. All right, John. Are there, I want to throw it out to the audience first. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to ask John a question about the office that he's running for? All right, I have a question for you, John. I'm gonna try to keep an eye on the uh oh yeah, since the in the primary this is a write-in campaign, is there a specific way that we need to spell your name?
Certainly. So when I originally declared my candidacy and registered on the Secretary's State Office website, I put my full name down, not realizing that that's what was going to be printed. That's what they were expecting for people to write in. So If you're going to do letter of the law, it's John, Jon. There's no H in my name, Jon. My middle name, Robert, and last name, Ralston, Ralston. So the best way to do it is to write in John Robert Ralston. I have it on, I wrote to the Secretary of State's office and clarified that if people don't write my name in perfectly, they will take into consideration the voter's intent and best try to match the what's written on the ballot to the voter's intent. So if you put an H in my name or you only say John, only write in John Ralston, they will accept those votes. But the best way to do it is to write in John, Jon, Robert Ralston.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. Is there anything about the Secretary of State's office that you have found interesting since running?
The thing that I found interesting is how boring it is. This, um, aside from like the county clerk of of courts, this may be the most boring office in politics, and it's a real tribute to the kind of itchy and scratchy show type dynamic between the Democrats and Republicans that has become so controversial. Um, Now, a lot of people only know about the Secretary of State because one of its the most famous job aspect is that it oversees elections. Counties run elections. The county recorders and election administrators in the counties run elections, but the Secretary of State uh, writes the elections manual and oversees elections. But besides that, they monitor the emblem, they certify notary publics, they they oversee like the state museum and things like that. So there are a bunch of responsibilities for the Secretary of State that they also do like business registrations that people just don't care about and are mundane. But the only thing that's kind of like tangible that people can kind of sink their fingers into and derive some kind of conflict to generate contrast to run campaigns on is administering elections. And unfortunately, with the craziness that's been going on since 2020, there's a lot to run on in that aspect, and you can't spell crazy without AZ. Um, so, uh, so the most interesting thing to kind of summarize is just how boring this office I think is. But we'll have to go and litigate some of these election integrity type issues to create differences and propose solutions and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you. Gary has his hand up. Go ahead, Gary.
John, I saw that another candidate apparently running for Secretary of State sent out a campaign mailer that was all about where he stands on education policy. What, if anything, does that have to do with that office?
Absolutely nothing. So, Gary is referring to my opponent in the Green Party primary. He's a gentleman named Dwayne Collier. He is what I and others refer to as a fraudulent sham candidate. If you search his name, DUWAYNCOLLIER, there are articles that show he's backed by Republicans, and he's a signature gatherer, and I don't know who put him up to it, who's behind him, but he has some backing from Republicans, and he's essentially running to try and hijack the Green Party ballot line. And he's running on very vague issues. Some of them are green, some of them are not, and some of them are just don't pertain to the actual office, uh, as Gary's question indicates. So hopefully, authentic Greens can see right through that. Unfortunately, his name will appear on the ballot. Part of the reason that I'm running is to thwart him, and people who appear on the ballot as Greens should embrace green values. So that's another reason why I'm running is to thwart him and to have an actual green, hopefully advance to the general election that advocates for things that the Secretary of State actually has some influence over. But he doesn't understand the issues of the Secretary of State's office or have any green solutions. So hopefully people see him as a fraudulent candidate that he is.
Thank you, John. I have two more questions for you. These are a little bit more hard hitting. Are you ready?
Certainly.
All right. The Green Party places a strong emphasis on nonviolence. How does that value influence your approach to public policy?
Um, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We should not engage in violence. And depending, and then it gets a little philosophical. What constitutes violence? Is rhetoric violent? Things like that. We should strive to see each other as human beings, and even if we disagree, we can disagree. We can. We don't have to be disagreeable as we disagree. There's a lot on the line. We're forgive me for saying this, but we're essentially still in the backlash to the election of the first black president, Barack Obama. I have my issues with Barack Obama, uh, but we're seeing, the ugly head of white supremacy uh, manifest in elections and these fights over policy and things like that. So, for without devolving into actual physical violence, we need to find a way to assuage people's fears about people that don't look like them or different cultures or things like that, to let them know that we'll be okay. And we just need to embrace each other and work together. And we're not going to agree all the time. Sometimes there's going to be winners, sometimes there's going to be losers, but overall, we're here for each other and we'll make it work.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Last question. What are the three most important issues facing voters in that you're for your district
For my district,
or for the Secretary of State's office? Sorry.
United States office. I think that's a question about perspective. Um, the Republican candidate's going to be all about quote unquote election integrity. Their slogan is going to be let's make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. Everything I've seen in terms of their solutions makes it harder to vote, and whether or not, and to my knowledge, there isn't a widespread cheating going on. So there's pretty in-depth history of the Republican Party trying to suppress turnout, and that benefits them politically. There's a pretty famous quote from the leader of the Heritage Foundation about conservatives doing better when voter turnout goes down. There was a court case in 2020 where the Arizona Republican Party literally argued before the Supreme Court that they do better uh, when turnout goes down. So the Republicans are going to focus on quote unquote election integrity, with the actual outcome being to drive down the vote. The Democrats they're going to fight. They're going to say that they're fighting for your right to vote and they want to, protect freedom and American and democracy, but they very narrowly only want people to vote for them, and they uphold a coercive system that keeps competition at bay and coerces voters to vote for quote unquote the lesser two evils. So my candidacy, as I said, is different from this kind of itchy, scratchy show. And that's a reference to The Simpsons, of the kind of a Tom and Jerry type cartoon where they fight kind of thing. Um, Mine is to broaden the franchise, not only in terms of people being able to vote, but who they can vote for. Uh, we were talking before the camera rolled about previous Green Party presidential candidates, and one of our previous presidential candidates, Howie Hawkins, had something interesting to say, in that candidate suppression is also a form of voter suppression, and the Democratic Party engages in candidate suppression, which is, in my estimation, a form of voter suppression. So we have three distinct kind of points of view. Mine is to bring in more people so that we have better representation.
Fabulous. Thank you, John. And for the last, you have 1 minute to end, and you can close up with anything that you would like our voters to remember about your candidates.
Certainly. So my website is John Ralston for SOS. So it's JONRALSTON, the number four SOS.com. It's a very basic website. I'm not very technically skilled, but I don't think you need to be. Go there to learn about the issues I'm championing. I have a couple of social media uh, presences going X, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. When I have a little bit more time, I'm going to try and get TikTok and Upscroll going. But go there to learn more about the candidacy and send me any questions and any invitations to other public forums where I can engage with voters. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you running for office with the Green Party and getting endorsed by the Arizona Green Party. That was awesome too. All right. Gary, would you like to go next?
Sure, I can go next.
All right. We're right on at the 6:30. We have 15 minutes. Um, if you would like to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Gary Swing. I think of an old t-shirt and bumper sticker slogan that said, if pro is the opposite of con, then what's the opposite of Congress? So I'm running for progress and running against Congress. I'm probably the only candidate for Arizona's 6th congressional district who has thru-hiked the 800-mile Arizona Trail all the way from the Mexican border to the border of Arizona with Utah. I've seen the environmental impact of mining, livestock, agriculture, water pollution, and climate change. I've been a vegetarian for 40 years, and I've been consistently anti-war my entire life. I became interested in the Green Party in 1984 when I read about Green parties in Europe advocating for nonviolence, ecology, grassroots democracy, and social justice. I support the Kellogg-Briand Pact, which outlaws war as a tool of foreign policy. I oppose all foreign military aid and all foreign military intervention. I support shutting down foreign military bases and restricting the U.S. military to non-offensive defense of U.S. territory. I support reducing the military budget by at least 90% and abolishing nuclear weapons. I support humanitarian foreign aid to end world hunger and secure safe drinking water worldwide. Israel has committed genocide against Gaza. I support war crimes tribunals, reparations to the people of Gaza, and nonviolent conflict resolution. I support a secular government for Palestine, including what is now Israel, elected by proportional representation with constitutional protection of civil liberties and empathy training in schools. I've been an advocate for proportional representation since 1993. Electing Congress and state legislatures by proportional representation would secure a fair, inclusive, multi-party representation in government. The U.S. Senate and the Electoral College should be abolished. The imperial presidency has far too much power. I propose switching to a parliamentary system. A chief executive who is selected by Congress should be subject to removal by a majority vote of no confidence and should have strictly limited authority. The United States was founded 250 years ago by white male slaveholders who designed a system to preserve slavery. I agree with Thomas Jefferson that each generation should create its own constitution and not be bound by the dictates of their barbarous ancestors. Post-apartheid South Africa has a far more progressive constitution than the United States does and provides for social rights as well as individual liberty. I support a national initiative and referendum process, public campaign financing, and easy ballot access to give voters more choices. I support freedom of migration as a universal human right. ICE should be abolished. I support a Green New Deal, transitioning to a steady state economy based on environmental sustainability. I support Medicare for all, a universal basic income, and public funding for higher education. I support public funding for family planning programs and federal legislation to secure abortion rights nationally.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
All right. Does anybody else want to throw Gary a question? All right. I have a few in the hopper. First, since you're running as a write-in, Gary, also, just like John, is there anything special about how to spell your name that the voters need to be aware of before July 21st?
Gary, G-A-R-Y, just one R. My last name is Swing, S-W-I-N-G. The Arizona Luminaria newspaper has already announced that I'm apparently the front runner because they said this is a swing district. They didn't call it a Sisquamani district or a Mendoza district, but a swing district. Write in Gary Swing for CD6. And since I'm running unopposed, I will be on the general election ballot as a Green Party candidate for this district.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Gary. Since you talked about nonviolence in your introduction, I'm going to pick a couple of different questions for you. Um, you're running for CD6, so how do you balance local concerns with broader national and global challenges?
Hmm. Um, well, talk with constituents about what the local issues are that are of concern to them. Water is an obvious issue in this part of the country. Um, Border issues are important. Civil rights for migrants in particular. This is this is an area in southeastern Arizona that's largely along the border or close to the border with Mexico. We have serious issues in the United States today with a government that is very anti-immigrant, that has no respect for civil rights. I support legal representation for undocumented workers, undocumented residents. I support asylum. I support freedom of travel and migration. I'm an advocate for open borders, and I'm concerned about the detention camps where people are being kept in inhumane conditions. My campaign messaging would be about human rights first and respecting people as people before the law with rights regardless of where they come from or where they are in the world.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Anybody else have any questions for Gary? I don't want to hog all the time. Go ahead, John.
Yes, Gary. Piggybacking on your just recent statement about the ICE detention facilities, there is a proposed ICE detention facility in Marana, which is a suburb northwest of Tucson. I don't recall if that's actually in your district or not, but can you comment with your thoughts on that proposed detention center?
I'm opposed to ICE detention centers. I call for the abolition of ICE. People should have a right to freedom of travel, freedom of migration. People should have a right to seek work anywhere in the world. And I don't think that we should be locking people up for simply for seeking to live somewhere different for either for economic or for human rights reasons. We should not be sending people back to places where they're going to be in danger. We certainly should not be sending people back to countries that they don't come from. And there needs to be a due process. There needs to be recognition of people before the law. People should, there should be a process that is reasonable for people to seek residency that's legal in the United States and to obtain citizenship so that they can live here and seek employment and economic opportunities themselves.
Here, here. John, did you have a second question?
Yeah, and since I'm down in the Tucson area, I thought I'd offer up some local type questions. So, one, Gary, what is your position on data centers? It's a controversial topic down here in Tucson. Two, within the city of Tucson, there is a push to make the local utility public. Um, so to basically use eminent domain to take over Tucson Electric Power. And then, obviously we're at the end of the Central Arizona project, which is a water system that diverts water from the Colorado River for Phoenix and then Tucson. We're the literal low man on the totem pole for that. So, given that there are issues with water for the Colorado River, what is your stance on water and managing our water issues? Over.
Uh, Okay, so you asked about water diversion projects, and you asked about data
So
centers,
data centers, public utility,
public utilities. Okay, great.
and water,
I,
essentially.
I support transitioning utilities to be publicly administered utilities. I support a moratorium on further data centers in Arizona. They're very, um, given the shortage of water resources in the state, we don't need to be using desert habitat for um, for water intensive data center development. Um, Animal agriculture is a primary user of water resources and also a primary source of water pollution and water degradation. Transitioning to a more plant-based diet uh, greatly reduces our need for water resources uh, and our dependence on water diversion. I do support. I support eliminating public funding for animal agriculture. I support transitioning to a more environmentally sustainable agricultural system, and I support true cost pricing to eliminate, to move away from factory farming so that uh, the environmental impacts of factory farming and inhumane treatment of animals is reflected in the price that people pay for meat and dairy products. Meat and dairy products are heavily subsidized through agricultural subsidies. I think there would be much less consumption of animal products if the cost of those products was not artificially reduced.
Did that answer all three of your questions, John? I was trying to keep track too.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, we have a few more minutes. That you covered a lot of ground there, Gary. Um, CD6, is there anything controversial happening with healthcare? Will your office have any say on any healthcare bills that are coming up?
Well, I've always been an advocate for a Medicare or single payer healthcare system to eliminate the bureaucracy of the private health insurance system. The United States is the only Western industrialized nation that doesn't have a universal healthcare system. We pay more for healthcare than almost any other country, and we get less for it. So, universal healthcare is a high priority. I supported when I was in when I was living in Colorado. I was part of the Colorado Coalition for Single Payer. They had a couple of efforts at a statewide ballot initiative, but never managed to get it enacted at the state level. I don't know if there's something specific to District 6, but I do support national health care.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. John, go ahead.
Yes. Gary joined me a couple weekends ago at a warm evening in Tucson for Juneteenth. And one of the things we were tabling and being seen being green, and one of the things that we were promoting was what I think is a unique aspect of the Green Party's platform is their plan for Black America, predominantly reparations for descendants of slaves. Gary, could you share your thoughts on that aspect of the Green Party platform? Over.
Uh, yes, the Green Party does have a national platform that advocates for reparations for slavery and for the impact of segregation and Jim Crow laws. I think it's been estimated that the long-term economic impact of slavery on Black Americans in the United States has been something like $14 trillion. And I'm open to discussing how we can have a more equitable society that deals with the impact of slavery and makes reparations for that. There have been bills session after session in Congress to study the idea of reparations, and they've stalled out in committee. They haven't really gotten anywhere. I think we have to look at how we can address the issues that are of concern in the reparations movement. Universal basic income is something that I've been an advocate for, and that's across the board to lift families out of poverty. Another thing I look at is how the entire system of government in the United States was designed by slaveholders, for slaveholders, and of slaveholders. We have a system of government that has kept it's kept conservative white men in a dominant position of political power throughout American history. Women are greatly underrepresented in this country. People of color are greatly underrepresented. And that's reinforced several ways. This comes back to proportional representation in one aspect, because proportional representation voting systems are designed to give representation that's fair to everyone, including underrepresented populations. Racial minorities are underrepresented, and they would have more opportunity to elect representatives of their choice if we had Congress and legislatures elected proportionally. We have an electoral college that has always created an artificial bias in favor of rural conservative states, traditionally states that had slavery or had segregation and Jim Crow laws. That bias towards conservative, largely white states is maintained in both the Senate and in the Electoral College for presidential elections. The Senate blocked measures to end slavery for 80 years and blocked civil rights legislation for many decades after that. So the Senate is an institution that never has any legitimacy. If we get rid of the Senate, then we have better representation for everyone. I also support statehood for Washington, D.C. Right now, Washington, D.C. is they don't have representation in Congress now, and they should. So, is there anything else you'd like me to address there?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Gary. I'll give you a minute to wrap up and remind our voters how to connect with you, your campaign, and
Okay.
anything else you'd like us to remember.
All right. Well, I'm running in CD6. This is considered to be one of about 14 to 18 so-called swing districts in the United States. So only about 4% of congressional districts in the United States are considered to be truly competitive between the two cartel parties. This is one of those districts. I have a campaign website. It's on Wix, and the address is a little awkward. It's https://theswingvote.wix.com/unity, or just go to politicsone.com az.htm, and you can find a directory of candidates from all over the place. On Facebook, I have a page that is facebook.com/runfromcongress.
All
That's
right.
it.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate it. All right. We had a few people join while Gary was doing his presentation. I'm just going to take just a few minutes just to remind everyone we are recording this so that the candidates can use anything that they feel was important from tonight's forum in their own campaign. So if you do not want to be recorded, please keep your cameras off and your microphones muted. Mike Cease also joined from Tucson. He's running for corporate commissioner. if you would like to uh, do a little, participate this evening, if you'd like to go after Carlos, Carlos is scheduled to go next. And I just want to check in with you, Mike, and see if you wanted to go after Carlos. Over.
Yes, I'll go after Carlos. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry I was late.
No worries. No worries. Appreciate it. All right, Carlos, are you ready? Well, you can have the floor for the first few minutes for an introduction, and then we'll have 15 minutes of Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Leanna. Yes, my name is Carlos Melendez. I am running for governor of Arizona. Um, I think that you know, my fellow Green Party candidates here laid out a lot of really important topics, especially not just facing Arizona, but across the entire country. I feel like Arizona is kind of a microcosm for the state of the rest of our country right now, especially when it comes down to exploitation of resources, whether that's natural resources or it's our water or the profiteering off of that exploitation. One of the main things that are really important to me is the moratorium on data center proliferation, because as someone who has inside knowledge, I know that it's just the beginning. Not only are they using an exponential amount of water, but also they're just starting. Um, I've heard talks in the industry about Microsoft opening several more data centers. They already have at least five that I personally know of. Massive data centers with multiple buildings. And Google is doing the same. They're expanding their data centers. They're talking about doubling their data center capacity, and they're trying to rush them in specifically to avoid a moratorium. So they're doing things like rushing construction and making data halls live before moratorium can activate because they're anticipating it. They know that the tide is turned against them. Largely, I believe that people do not agree with the way that our water and our resources are being used. So that's a major issue for me. Um, next is we've seen how our rights are being curbed and how heavy surveillance has become, especially as people have gone to the streets and they've started to try to make their voices heard. I think that surveillance is a huge problem, and I would definitely do a moratorium on flock camera and surveillance. I'm sure a lot of you have already seen it, but there are flock cameras on almost every street corner at this point, at least deep in the city here in Phoenix. And they're using it for surveillance. There's no doubt about that. Um, Living in Arizona has become extremely expensive. Utilities, food, but especially rent. I was I I moved to Arizona about 6 years ago or 7 years ago, and during that time, rent has nearly doubled. Um, there are people who are being forced out of their neighborhoods. And my rent at one point went up by $600 a month. Uh, and a lot of people, I saw a lot of people during that time move out of my neighborhood because they can no longer afford rent. And we have nothing on the books to regulate that. So I would definitely like to do that as well. Um, Overall, I think that uh, the current the politicians in both the Republican and Democratic parties are more interested. They may some of them may pay lip service, but a lot of them are um, complicit in the acts of ICE and in surveillance of this by the state in favor of helping these organizations cause terror. If I were governor, I would do everything in my power to fight the opening of detention centers and disrupt nonviolently in any way I can ICE activity. Um, um, So overall, I think the key focus is that there are people in Arizona who are not being heard, both working class people, but also people of color and LGBTQ people. The community here don't have they do not have the protections that they deserve to feel safe in our state. And if I were governor, I would fight to protect all these groups of people and to pass legislation that actually helps. And that's pretty much my platform in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it. I'll ask you the first question, the same as the other candidates. Since you are running as a write-in candidate, how should we be mindful to spell your name correctly on the ballot?
So to write my name on the ballot, it's just Carlos Melendez. That's Carlosmelendez.
All right. Awesome. And are there any questions from the audience for Carlos? I do see a hand up. John, go ahead.
Yes, Carlos, you kind of touched upon one of these things, but from my perspective as a Green here in Arizona, uh, the people of Arizona are not represented on two issues by the Democrats and the Republicans. One you've touched upon, and Gary's touched upon in terms of data centers. It seems like the Democrat and Republican parties are both in favor of data centers. Um, so you've kind of touched upon that aspect, unless you want to elaborate on that. And then another issue in which there's agreement with the Democrats and Republicans, where we have an opportunity to differentiate ourselves, is the genocide in Gaza and Lebanon, and our relationship with Israel. There's been some pushback against the protests against the genocide in Gaza, and I was wondering, as a governor, what would be your policies? How would you address that issue? Over.
Sure, thank you, John. So just to do I did talk a lot about data centers, but I'll do a brief aside about it. When it comes to data centers, I think that a moratorium is a must. I think it's part of the broader issue of AI. And AI can be used as a tool. I've seen um, some ways that it can be used if it's used responsibly. The problem comes in the form of short-term profits and the desire to expand. And we've seen this song and dance before, right? We've seen an industry expand for short-term profit just for it to collapse. There are a lot of non-viable uses for AI, and it's quite frankly just wasteful. So I think that the expansion of data centers needs to be done in a way that uses green energy and is in a way that is uh, done in a responsible way using renewable resources. And a lot of them will claim they do, but in reality they don't. I've seen it with my own eyes. Um, to talk to speak on Israel and Gaza, I don't know if the audience knows this, but Arizona is actually a huge state for the aerospace industry. We have Lockheed Martin here, we have Raytheon here. Um, it's part of the uh, it's part of the core of the Arizona economy, uh, which is one of the things that needs to be addressed that people don't talk about enough is that they have been allowed to run rampant and to chase profit by selling weapons to Israel. I think one of the ways that I would fight that would be, for one, to take a public stance, a public verbal and written stance against um, assisting the apartheid and genocide in Gaza and in Greater Palestine. But also, I would also find all the ways I can to disincentivize um, Arizona as a comfortable and safe place to support Israel by whatever means necessary, whether that means collaborating with other offices uh, of state, you know. Um, uh, But I think the thing is that that we need to understand is that they're actively incentivized to create weapons that kill children and people in Palestine. And we need to do the opposite of that.
Thank you, Carlos. We have another question from Mike. Go ahead.
Yes. Uh, Carlos, I wanted to bring up related to uh, the Palestinian issue. My understanding is that sitting Governor Hobbs last year in 2025 signed legislation that criminalized student protests. That's my understanding. As governor, what action would you take to rescind that unconstitutional um, legislation that Governor Katie Hobbs signed?
Well, that's a two-part answer. First, uh, it stands the issue of like, having allies who also support rescinding that. So my goal, of course, is to repeal that. But my other goal too is to support anyone and everyone who supports the goals of the Green Party, whether that's electorally, out of state, in state, wherever it is. I want to fight it as a broader issue. And the same goes for Israel Palestine, right, as well, and the data centers. I want to reach across the aisle, across states, across districts, and I want to support anybody who supports it. And I want to repeal that, um, so that way people can uh, exercise their rights to protest. I want to stop weapons and arms from going to Israel. And quite frankly, I want to increase the power of labor unions in Arizona as well and abroad as well. So I would want to repeal right to work and assist people in their right to organize in all ways, not just socially, not just politically, but economically as well. Did I answer your question, Mike?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carlos. All right. Well, we're waiting. I have a question for you, Carlos, um, primarily based on housing, housing costs, and homelessness. In 2022, when I ran against Katie Hobbs, homelessness was becoming a huge issue. And Katie Hobbs, our current governor, has the extent of what I have observed her administration helping the housing market um, has only been offering certificates for people. I haven't seen any real deep help happening for Arizonans who are experiencing homelessness. Can you explain if you have a plan for to address homelessness in Arizona? Over.
Thank you for the question, Leanna. So I think that I'm glad you brought this up because I feel like, you know, talking about vulnerable citizens, I feel like homeless people are a largely ignored group. Um, People oftentimes will come to places like Arizona or California or what have you in order to try and build a better life, only to end up homeless. They come here and they have their stuff together, and there's a lot of people who reality is they're only one paycheck away from homelessness, you know? Um, and I think that the mentality around homeless people is something that is deplorable and needs to change. These are people who need help. And I think that we need to seriously look at the underlying structures and completely rebuild them because I don't think that the way that we handle homelessness in America in general is is adequate. Um, to answer your question more specific, like more directly, I do not have a specific plan, but I would like it to look something like giving people who are homeless, um, creating a program or project that allows homeless people to truly have a sense of safety and a place to store their belongings, and also to have a safe place to sleep at night, and whatever that looks like. We have we have this epidemic in the United States of empty houses and people who are living on the streets. Um, and quite frankly, I spoke to someone who used to be homeless when I was in Denver, and they essentially came to me and they said, "Look, man, like when I was homeless, um, my biggest problem was I had to have my social security card, I had to have my birth certificate, I needed to have all these documents in order to live as a legitimate citizen." Um, and I spent a year gathering them all. And then I went into the bathroom for 15 minutes and I came out and it was all gone. And I had to start all over again. So there are ways that even if we are meeting somewhere in the middle with these Republicans and Democrats, that we can assist people when it comes to exiting homelessness. And it's a multifaceted thing, right? It's housing, it's mental health, it's safety. And quite frankly, we just would need to build it from the ground up, a completely new program.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Howard, you have a question? Let's see. You should be able to unmute yourself. And I don't hear you yet, Howard. All right. While we're waiting for Howard to fix his audio, I'm going to move to Mike. You had your question up? Oh,
Uh,
wait.
it looks like Howard's video's on.
Yeah.
That I don't hear Howard's audio. I didn't want to go ahead of Howard if he's ready. Is your audio working, Howard?
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. I guess this phone takes a minute to kick in. Hi, I was saying that Carlos, we have some commonalities in that we are members of our respective clubs for the CPUSA. Um, so I'm glad to have a red green alliance of sorts. I'm wondering, since the Phoenix and the Tucson clubs, operate fairly independently of each other. Um, do you anticipate, being able to enlist the support of the clubs in your campaign, basically?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm gonna definitely be able to do that, and not only the support of Tucson, but also the support of other organizations. I'm currently discussing what support looks like for the from the DSA, for example. And we're talking about ways that they can support us. They have their things, of course, that they're doing as well. So their support will be limited by that. But I'm going to discuss that and also discuss things with Tucson as well. Um, uh, Electoralism, electoral politics is not something that CPUSA focuses on. So I'm here in a show of support for our friends here at the Green Party. I do consider myself a Green as well. I support everything that the Green Party stands for. Um, and I plan to collaborate with as many organizations on the left that are willing to support our campaigns, all of us.
Awesome.
But
Thank you. Did you have another
now,
question, Howard?
just a follow-up. The political reality, Carlos, is often that organized labor uh, lines up with the Democrats. I mean, that's no big news to anyone. So, um, do you have some specific strategies or points or ways of convincing organized labor in Arizona? I mean, I know you can't expect 100% agreement with everyone on everything, but I think you know what I mean. What,
Yeah, I understand. So that's interesting because, I'm here on the electoral front, fighting for what we believe in here, but also our local club here in Phoenix is actively building relationships with unions and union leadership, and building those relationships underneath. There is a huge shift in, at least in Phoenix, I can speak on, um, in the membership of unions, generally leaning more left and being less partisan. So they're less focused um, on seeing the Democratic Party as their saviors, so to speak, and more on getting tangible change for their rights as workers.
good, good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that question, Howard. And Mike, you're next.
Yeah, I just had a couple of short segues. One was to the issue that Leanna brought up, the homelessness issue. I just wanted to add that, um, and Gary mentioned this in his presentation. Um, the thing that's known as UBI, Universal Basic Income, is one of the, it's not the only way, but it's one of the best systemic ways to address homelessness. And I bring that up also in the context of that's a federal issue. So if you're elected governor, Carlos, you wouldn't have direct power to get federal legislation for universal basic income, UBI. However, it would be a strong position to lobby from as a governor of a state. So I just want to mention that. There's also I'm just going to throw out too, because we were talking about coalitioning with other leftist groups, and I know Carlos and I have discussed this. There's groups like Code Pink Phoenix is one that came to mind. There's also PSL Phoenix Group, the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I realize different party, but they don't have a lot of electoral presence, but they do have a lot of direct action activity going on. So there's that group, and then there's the I thought of this one too. There's Mass Liberation Arizona has an active chapter in Phoenix, and that would be a really good group for not just Carlos's campaign, for all of our candidates to coalition with. Thank you. Over.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are all fantastic ideas, Mike. And to speak on the homelessness issue just one more time, I do believe that I would first of all, I want to say that unequivocally I support universal basic income. It would massively improve the conditions of families and working class people. Um, I would want, while I cannot do that, affect it as governor. Like you said, I can lobby it, and also I can support policies that would support it on the back end. For example, um, introducing rent controls, it would be extremely important for the introduction of UBI, because the last thing we want to do is to introduce UBI and then have that money be stolen on the back end by landlords. So there's a lot of things that I can do on my end as governor.
All right. And Howard, do you have another question?
Oh, I I'm not sure if this question is more appropriate for Carlos or maybe for John, who's sorry, his presentation I think I missed, but this is in terms of the candidates who are not here. Um, maybe this is a good question for all the candidates. What steps can be taken, at least in the future, to prevent the kind of situation we have now, where we have usurpers on the ballot for governor and secretary of state, um, and the party endorsed candidates need to depend on write-in votes to get their names, on the general. That's it. Thank you.
That's a good question. Gary and Mike and John, I think have all spoke about this. Any one of you, if you would like to address Howard's question, go ahead, Gary or John, either one.
Gary had his hand up first.
Oh, okay. Um, so there are several pieces to that. We need to get rid of the opportunity and the incentive for people to do that. So the opportunity comes about in part from having really bad ballot access laws in Arizona. 17 other states allow smaller parties to nominate candidates by party assembly. In Arizona, the party has no control over who files for a party primary. So if we can put candidates directly on a Green Party primary ballot, the same for other minor parties, then we won't have a situation where the major parties will have sham candidates on the ballot and we won't have candidates of our own on our own primary and have to run write-ins against the sham candidates who are on the ballot. Second of all, the incentive is created by having a winner-take-all voting system in single-member districts and a plurality voting system. So if we have sincere voting systems, we can use ranked choice voting or range voting or star voting, multiple choice voting systems for single winner executive offices. Then there won't be a so-called spoiler effect to create an incentive for candidates who are insincere to try to run on a ballot line they don't represent. Also, if we reduce petition signatures or ballot qualifications to qualify new parties, we can have a proliferation of more parties, more choices, more voices. So instead of having people for other smaller parties, for example, trying to use the Green Party's ballot, they can get on the ballot themselves, create new parties. Now, the bigger issue really to me is that we don't have fair representation for a politically diverse voting population. So if we were to elect the state legislature, for example, by proportional representation, say using the hybrid proportional representation model that's proposed by Best Democracy, bestdemocracy.com, we could have 98% of voters elect state representatives of their choice. Almost everyone would have fair representation. And if we elected members of Congress statewide by proportional voting method, 90% of voters would be able to elect representatives of their choice. So votes would not be wasted, and there wouldn't be a spoiler effect.
Thank you, Gary. That was fabulous. John?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Gary said, and that most of that is the backbone of my campaign. The only thing in addition that I would add is that we've got to strengthen the Green Party so that we have our own so that we have the infrastructure available to get ballot signatures to qualify. If we continue in this system, we need to have the infrastructure to get the signatures that we need, and then we also need to have people that are willing to step up and run for office. And we need to really bolster the Green Party in order to do that. So this campaign with all of our candidacies is an opportunity to grow the party and to bring more people into be engaged and active, so that if we continue with this system where we're not nominating by where we're eliminating the primary and nominating by convention, we at least have our own green candidates that run on green values that compete in the primary with their name on the ballot. So, there's been some response to the sham candidates like, hey, Arizona Green Party, why aren't you doing more? And, we're all doing what we can. And given our small numbers and limited resource and constraints, what we achieve is actually quite remarkable. And so just imagine what we can do if we had 10 or 20 people in each county that were active and contributing money and studying up on the issues and local issues and running at all levels of government.
Thank you, John. That was
Actually,
very eloquent. Go ahead.
so the question is, why don't you do more? Then gets flipped around. So why don't you do more? Join the Green Party. Let's transform this state and make it happen. Over.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you. And Mike, do you want to comment on this? Otherwise, I want to let Carlos do his conclusion.
Well, I just want to make a brief comment to to address Howard's question because Howard's question comes up all the time, literally, about not only from our own Greens, but also the media, the general public out there. Everyone's asking, okay, you've got these sham candidates that are flagrantly interfering with the Green Party's primary elections. I think that's relatively well understood, but how it keeps happening and why, that's a complicated question. I don't want to get in the weeds of all of it, but a simple answer to um, Howard's question is in 2013, the state legislature passed this legislation that essentially up the nominating signature requirements to get on the primary ballots for Greens and Libertarians by a factor of about five times the nominating signatures. Okay, they passed this legislation primarily targeting the Libertarians. I don't think the Republican legislature in 2013, I don't think we were on their radar, but it affected us. Okay, it affected us a little differently than it did the Libertarians. But long story short, the Libertarians since 2013 have had extremely few. I am only aware of one down ballot candidates that have made it to the written ballot in November in any general election cycle. We're not talking about presidential. Presidential is its own thing. But down ballot candidates, it was mission accomplished for the Republican legislature when they passed that heinous law that upped the nominating sig requirements by about a factor of five, okay, for small parties like Greens and Libertarians. How did it affect us? Well, again, I don't want to go in all the weeds. 2018, it had a huge impact. We lost one of the best candidates we've ever had for Senate named Evie Rezagari, specifically because of that. Her campaign would have had three times as many SIGs as they needed. They did get them, but they didn't have enough valid ones under this heinous rule that upped it by five. So the Dems sued her off the ballot. We lost one of the best candidates we ever had. In 2024, fast forward for the same Senate seat, Eduardo, same issue. He got national coverage about the hijacking from a candidate named Michael Norton 2 years ago, put up by the Dems, by the way, or Dem operatives. And by the way, they had $90,000 to do their hijacking. But anyway, Eduardo was interviewed by Liz Goodwin, Washington Post, asked that same question. Okay, I get it. You're being hijacked by outside forces and election interference in the Green Party's primary. Why didn't your campaign, Eduardo, go and get the nominating signatures you needed? Well, that's that long answer. There's no soundbite answer to that, but essentially the legislature put up this barrier five times as many. Yes, the sham candidates are able to do that because they have money backing them. Okay. So again, it sounds like we're whining, but I did want to address Howard's question because it's a lot of people are asking the same question Howard's asking. Thank you. Over.
Thank you so much for answering that, candidates. It is a hot topic for this primary election, and I appreciate all of you being able to speak eloquently about it. Carlos, you have a minute to wrap up, give us a little conclusion and about your candidacy and what you would like us to remember from tonight. Over.
Absolutely, thank you. One of the things I would like everyone to remember is that right now we're in a time where we're basically fighting for our lives and our rights. So anything that you can do to support my fellow candidates here in terms of spreading the word, remember that there are forces in Arizona specifically who are acting to try to remove Green Party endorsed candidates from the spotlight. including paying untold amounts of money on text messages and emails and mail and so remember, write in all of us for our respective offices, and that we're here to fight for ecological and social rights. And that's a fight that's always worth fighting for. Um, I appreciate all of you for giving me the time to speak today.
Thank you, Carlos. Appreciate it. All right. So our last candidate for this evening participating in the GPMC 2026 primary candidate forum is Mike Cease running for corporate commissioner. Mike, you have the floor to give us a few minutes of your introduction, and then we'll open it up to question and answer. Over.
Thank you, Leanna. I appreciate the opportunity to address this forum. Yes, as Leanna mentioned, most of you know me. My name is Mike Cease. I'm running for Arizona Corporation Commissioner. I do want to bring up my notes here real briefly, and I'll just give a summary overview of my campaign platform. So, as Corporation Commissioner, I'm going to address some of the most compelling issues that are facing our state. And Corporation Commissioner it does get some attention, but it's somewhat overlooked. It's considered a panel of 5 individuals, 5 commissioners who oversee businesses in Arizona. It's considered somewhat boring and administrative, but it's actually far from that, the actual job. I'm going to change things when I'm elected because I'm going to hold these companies in Arizona accountable, something they haven't really faced any real accountability as far as I can remember for many, many decades. So things are going to change when I'm elected corporation commissioner. To start with, Arizona companies that are complicit in the U.S.-Israeli genocide of the Palestinian people, our tax dollars go into that. Not only will I will immediately take action to sanction those Arizona companies, but furthermore, as long as they continue to operate in that horrible enterprise and those horrible atrocities with our tax dollars, they will be under my administration as corporation commissioner. They'll be banned, not just sanctioned, they'll be banned from doing business in this state. Furthermore, as you all know, we have a climate crisis. We have, I will sanction those companies who are slow walking the transition from fossil fuel based energy to renewable energy. There's also mining companies that are destroying the Santa Rita Mountains here in southern Arizona, Oak Flat in northern Arizona, and other Native American sacred sites are being affected and polluting our groundwater. These same companies will be sanctioned and will no longer be allowed to do business as usual in the state of Arizona. I will target agribusiness companies that are wasting gargantuan amounts of our scarce water resources here in the desert. And as you all well know, we're in a long-term mega drought here in the desert Southwest. So no more business as usual for those companies. Companies exploiting people with high rental rates and evictions will be evaluated for fines and sanctions accordingly. Let's see. Also, health insurance companies will not be permitted to profit from human suffering. Companies that have to come to the Corporation Commission for authorization to operate. We will demand fair rates until we can implement universal health care. And then finally, weapons companies supplying the Democrats and the Republicans the tools for a permanent war economy and wars for empire, bringing us every day closer to nuclear war. These companies will also be sanctioned and will not be allowed to conduct business as usual in the state of Arizona. That's just a summary overview. There's a lot of stuff in corporation commissioner. I hope I'm fortunate enough to get elected. It's a challenge, but we'll see what happens. Thank you. Over.
All right. Thank you so much. Mike, I'll ask you the first question while the audience is preparing their questions. Since you are running as a write-in candidate for the 2026 primary, how should the voters, be mindful about how to spell your name on the ballot?
Yes. It's first name Mike, Mike, and last name Cease, Cease.
All right. Awesome. All right. I don't see any questions yet. I'm going to ask you a question about corporate commissioner. The corporate commission in Arizona oh, I'm sorry, John, I see your hand up. Go ahead, John.
Sure. Forgive me, Mike, if you covered this because I missed a part of your intro, but I asked Gary about this as well since he's down here in Tucson. There is a movement to uh, make the local Tucson utility public, of which the Pima County Green Party is a part of that coalition, Public Power Campaign. What is your stance on that specific campaign? And then broadly, what are your thoughts on uh, public utilities and allowing seizure via eminent domain to create public utilities? Over.
Absolutely. Excellent question, John. Thank you for asking. So, with specifically TEP, my understanding is they go to the city of Tucson jurisdiction municipality for their charter. I'm not sure they are covered under the rubric of the Arizona Corporation Commission, and I will definitely look into that. And yes, I support what's known as public power utilities. So any present energy utility companies that are under the rubric of the Arizona Corporation Commission, those will be examined. So thank you for your question, John. And I did want to add one thing. I apologize to everyone. I forgot to add to my overall platform, and this is a key thing, and I neglected to add this to my notes. One of my top priorities as corporation commissioner will be sanctioning data centers and supporting moratorium on the same. So again, any data center coming, it's complicated in this sense that data centers usually go to local municipalities similar to TEP, but Arizona Corporation Commission does oversee all businesses in the state of Arizona. So as commissioner, I will do everything I can to support those data center moratoriums and things of that nature, given some of it, again, there may be local control issues and municipalities. Like I heard John mention that, for example, one of those insidious data centers was trying to get the jurisdiction of the small city of Marana here in Pima County to allow a data center to come in. So could the Arizona Corporation Commission step in there and have some sort of say? I will investigate that and see it. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate you all, but I forgot to mention the data center moratorium, and definitely I will do everything in my power as corporation commissioner.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that, Mike. Okay, Howard, you have your hand up?
Yeah. Short and long question, Mike. So just to clarify, we should write you in as Mike and not Michael? That was just a short question.
Correct.
Okay, and I certainly agree with everything you said. I am wondering, since it sounds like a lot of those plans to sanction companies, let's say, who were, supporting Israeli genocide, to me those sound uh, aspirational. I'll put it that way. Um, I mean, for example, some of us, I know, a year or two ago went in front of Granite headquarters to protest their supplying bulldozers to the IDF to knock down Palestinian homes. Um, so it seems like, as horrific as that kind of business model is, um, what sort of legal backing or rationale would you be able um, to employ in that end? I mean, you can always function as kind of a bully pulpit, but I don't. Is it something? Is something that would affect foreign policy even um, subject to the actions of the Corporation Commission or something? I mean, preventing price gouging by utilities and that's certainly one thing, but to try and influence foreign policy as much as it needs to be influenced, is that you know is that something that you have some concrete legal strategy for? Or
Thank you for your question, Howard. Very, very good question. So I'll start with the first part of your question. Yes, my vision is, I would say, of course, somewhat aspirational, as you said, recognizing the reality that if I were to be elected, which yes, there's some obvious challenges there to getting elected in the first place. But let's say I were to be elected, I realize that the job of corporation commissioner, it's made up of 5 people on the corporation commission. So what could I do alone in terms of these aspirational goals, sanctioning mining companies, sanctioning companies that are doing business, such as the bulldozers that you mentioned for the IDF, things of that nature, but that's not the only example. So I do know that all companies doing business in Arizona are subject to oversight of the Arizona Corporation Commission. So I will do everything in my power to bring those companies to light. And even if there's not 2 other votes on the 5-panel Corporation Commission, yes, it is aspirational, but I will certainly highlight it and do everything in my power as one of the commissioners to bring all of these companies to task and bring it in the public spotlight. One other thing you mentioned as far as legal action, that's not really the job of corporation commissioners. However, they can refer to the state law enforcement entity known as the Attorney General. So unfortunately, we don't have a Green Party Attorney General to refer this to, but these matters that do require legal action, I, as commissioner, would certainly refer that to whoever the sitting attorney general is of the state, as they're being the chief law enforcement officer in that realm. So thank you for your question. I hope that addresses it. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Are there any other questions? All right, we have just a couple minutes. Mike, if you would like to take this time to summarize, wrap up, and leave us with something impactful to remember you from tonight.
Well, I did put into the chat notes just for information how to contact my campaign. The campaign email address is ceasedforcorporationcommissioner@gmail.com. I also put a link to a campaign page, Facebook page, for Cease for Commissioner. Just for everyone's information, my campaign is working on getting a campaign website similar to the one that John Ralston developed, and the same individual that helped John is also helping my campaign with that. That's somebody you all know, Stephen Adger. So shout out to Stephen on that one. I'm also I'm I should have done this earlier, and my apologies, but as soon as possible, I'm going to get a campaign Cease for Commissioner Twitter page, Twitter account for a campaign. I mean, I have a personal Twitter account, but I'm going to get a campaign Twitter account because Twitter can be effective. Yes, it's owned by, right-wing forces and that sort of thing, but, it's a communication tool. I'm also going to, with John's help, I'm going to look into getting a free campaign Blue Sky social media account. So that's just some of the things that the Cease for Commissioner campaign is up to. And yeah, as far as leaving you something for Cease for Commissioner, just I thank you in advance for writing me in for the primary election, and then when I advance to the general, I also appreciate your support in the general election upcoming. Thank you. Over.
All right, thank you so much. Um, I think we should give a big round of applause for all of our candidates this evening. Everyone sounds prepared to answer questions, and I think a few of you have already done an interview with Amy. She's trying to get those interviews out and posted so that our voters can meet the candidates. As far as the Green Party of Maricopa County, I want to extend my gratitude to all of you for stepping up and running for an office for the Green Party so that our voters have someone to vote for. And with that, we'll conclude the candidate forum.